Hey, it's Dr. Sean with Active Life, and we're going to go over our athlete's hierarchy of needs today with some demonstrations so that you can very clearly understand what we're trying to do here. The idea of the athlete's hierarchy of needs, this pyramid that we're about to fill in, is that if you're hurting or if you're working with a client who's hurting, rushing to judgment and doing the solution that you've seen on YouTube or the quick fix that you found somewhere on Instagram is a really bad idea. Not only is it wasteful in terms of time, it's also probably not going to be very effective. What we like to do with our clients is we work them through this hierarchy and determine where the biggest root cause of their problem is, and we solve that problem before we move on to the next one. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the base of the pyramid, the do not pass go. If this is a problem, nothing else matters until you solve this, and it's flexibility. We have a very specific definition for flexibility, and it's very simple. Passive range of motion. So it's the amount of motion that a joint can go through with either the assistance of gravity or external load. So we're going to use Jimmy today, and we're going to demonstrate what flexibility would look like in his hips as well as in his shoulders. So have you lie on the ground for me, please, Jimmy. When we look at hip flexibility, the first thing we're looking at, and by the way, we have a full movement assessment where we go through the entire body on this, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to keep it simple. So for hip flexibility, all I'm going to do is take Jimmy through our hip flexion test. So again, if you want to learn how to do these tests, definitely go watch our movement screen where we teach you how to do all of it. This is just me demonstrating it for you. Okay, so I'm going to see how much range of motion Jimmy's hip has. All I'm looking to see is, can he get his thigh in contact with his ribs without his back flattening down hard into my hand? And he does, as you can see, have full range of motion of his hip in a very simple and rough way to test it. If Jimmy was in the gym and I was having him squat, provided that this leg moves as well as this one does, I would not be concerned at letting him go down to full depth. If, however, one leg was performing and the other one wasn't, so for example, if I came and measured this one, for the purposes of the camera, I'll stay on this side. If I could only get it to here before he started to round down hard into his back or feel a pinch in the front of his hip or have any kind of pain, this is the depth I'd have him squatting to. It would not be to full depth that is currently what we're doing in this space, right? His full depth is his full depth, your full depth is your full depth. So that's how we would look at flexibility for the hip. For the shoulder, for example, passive range of motion for the shoulder would be Jimmy's going to start bringing his arms over his head. I'm going to assist. I'll take this one. We're just going to see how far we can get this arm. Both gravity is assisting it, and if necessary, if you only ended up about here, I could push a little bit extra and see if we can go a little further. This is the flexibility of his shoulder. It's passive range of motion. Are you doing any work in this position?
No.
No work. So go ahead and test the other arm the same way. And now because gravity is pulling his arm down, it's flexibility. It's passive range of motion of the joint. He has, generally speaking, full flexibility in the shoulder. We're not worried about him doing things like shoulder presses, handstand push-ups, kipping pull-ups, kettlebell swings, and whatnot. Okay? Thank you, Jimmy. We can now stand him up. So now, we're not worried about him doing those movements, provided that the next thing on our athlete's hierarchy is also full. The next thing on our hierarchy is mobility. Now, at Active Life, we believe that these two words too often get mixed together. And people use them interchangeably when in reality they're not interchangeable. We consider the two of them combined to be what we call movement, but they are clear and distinctly different things. So mobility is active range of motion. We just talked about expressing your range of motion passively with the assistance of gravity or external load. Now what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate the same two joint actions with Jimmy from a mobility perspective. So Jimmy, let's bring you over here for the camera, please. And all we're going to do is, the first thing I want Jimmy to do is show me mobility in the hip by bringing your knee as high as you can through the same hip flexion we just did. So you can see the angle that he creates here is a little bit less than the angle he was able to create laying on his back, but it's still full. He's still able to get to the bottom of his squat. Let's see it on the other side. And you can see he's performing that side fairly well as well. Now, you can put it down. If balance becomes an issue, we can always go grab a wall. It doesn't have to be standing and testing like this. I'm just demonstrating to you that this is active range of motion, where previously we were working on passive range of motion. One of the questions that we commonly will get is, who cares if he has active range of motion in his hip, if he has the passive, the flexibility, and we're having him do something like a squat where he's going to be going down with the assistance of gravity. In that case, mobility is important because of the amount of control that Jimmy needs to be able to maintain through that range of motion. And if he can't get into the position without external loading putting him there, we become concerned that he's going to be able to control it when external load puts him there. So we demonstrated what shoulder flexion would look like in a passive range of motion as far as flexibility goes when Jimmy was lying on the floor. Now to show you what full shoulder flexion looks like in an active range of motion, which is going to be his mobility, we do it standing. So go ahead, Jimmy, and bring your arm straight up over your head into flexion. And what we're looking for in this position is Jimmy's ear in front of his arm? Are his elbows locked out overhead? Can he do it on both sides? Now, of course, there's going to be some nuance to this. Some people are going to arch their back and try to cheat to get to a range of motion. I don't want you to worry about that so much right now. If you're looking for that really, really, really minute detail, it means that someone's going to be living in a gray area, and we're probably going to let them go based on their symptoms. Okay, but flexibility is going to be passive range of motion. We tested that laying on the floor or using assistance. We could do flexibility here. If I wanted to take his arm overhead, that would be flexibility as well. And then mobility is active range of motion where he did it by himself against gravity on his own. Okay? So if somebody has full flexibility and full mobility, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do a given movement without pain unless they have a distinct issue in one of the three above categories that we haven't described yet. Strength balance. So a great way to test for your strength balance is very, very simple. Do unilateral pressing, unilateral step-ups, or something along those lines where it's very clear you're going to use the same weight and you're going to see how many reps you can do. So for Jimmy's example, we're going to grab a 20-pound dumbbell here and we're just going to show what strength balance would look like left to right. So Jimmy's going to go ahead and bring that dumbbell up to his shoulder. And I want you to go ahead and press it for as many reps as you can on the left. Slower down, faster up. All right, so you want to maintain that control. 17, 18, 19. Good, he's done. He can't get another rep. Let's take a little break. Say 2-3 minutes went by. Now he's going to switch to the right arm and do the same thing. And let's say you got to 3, 4, and 5, and that's all Jimmy's got. He's going to put the weight down. Jimmy got 19 reps on his left arm in a press and 5 reps on his right arm. That should stand out as a problem to you. Another example of a strength balance issue that we see all the time is athletes who prefer to be deadlifting when they're supposed to be squatting. Right? So you see it all the time. Someone who looks like they're hinging when they squat. Go ahead, down, Jimmy. And then on the way back up, that butt flies up in the air and they kind of stand the weight up. That was a really exaggerated version of it. Well done. Show them one that's a little bit more nuanced. Yeah. So typically when we see that, there might be some kind of a movement limitation. There might be a flexibility or a mobility issue. But very commonly what we see as the problem here is that that person would just rather be deadlifting. So go ahead and show them one more time and pause as soon as you start that hinge on the way up. Go down, butt shoots up. That is almost a deadlifting position. As he starts to rise up, those legs are going to straighten out. And now from there, his back comes up. That's a hinge. This is probably an athlete who prefers to deadlift. Typically, when we look at these people, they're not meeting what we call our 80 to 100 rule, which means that they should be able to back squat 80 pounds for every 100 pounds that they're able to deadlift. 1 rep, 10 reps, it doesn't matter, that ratio holds strong. These are good examples of how you can test somebody's strength balance, and we have many more in our coach program, and we teach this in our immersion. The next step on the athlete's hierarchy of needs. Now, what we're assuming is somebody's gone through flexibility, no problem. They've gone through mobility, no problem. So movement is great. Their strength balance is in line, because if that's out of whack, the next steps are not as important until we figure this one out. But the next one's going to be work to recovery. We like to make sure that the athletes we're working with are getting at least 15, ideally 20 minutes of recovery for every hour of work that they're doing. So what does that mean? Recovery could be something like a nice, easy row. It could be the performance care segments that we release every Tuesday on our Instagram. And in all of our programs, they're built in on purpose so that you guys are getting forced recovery. They're 15 to 20 minutes long. But the idea of recovery is that the heart rate is going to be kept low, meaning that you can move through things. You never feel like you have to wait until your heart rate slows down. Your breathing rate is low. It's below 10 respirations per 30 seconds at all times. You're able to talk the entire time. That's the kind of intensity that we want you at. We're touching our end ranges, and we're making sure that the control is great. We're learning new skills, but we're doing it as a recovery workout. You shouldn't be burning out. There should be more left in the tank. We want 15 minutes minimum, 20 minutes ideally for every hour of work that somebody does. So if you train in the gym 4 days a week for an hour, you need that 5th day to be a full 1 hour recovery day. That's the goal of our work to recovery ratio. Very often we see people who have problems with this and they wonder why they're in pain. They wonder why they're not getting the results that they want to get. If you're in the gym 8 days in a row, you're not going to get the benefits of having been in the gym. You need to recover. So on top of our active recovery, we want you to have at least 1 full rest day every week where you do nothing. Not even asking you to go for a walk or row lightly or do a performance care segment. I just want you to take the day off. This is a big problem that we see, especially in people who work long hours, who have trouble getting their kids to sleep at night, who have stressful jobs. Stress, good stress, bad stress, it's all stress. Work recovery is out of whack. None of this is going to do well. So check on this alongside all of these, no matter what. The last thing we look at on here is going to be skill. Now, if you've ever been to a local competition, you've seen bad skill. And people do get hurt doing things the wrong way. This takes the longest amount of time to fix, yet it's the first thing that people typically go to. They see somebody hinging their squat, and what's the first cue you give them? Chest up, right? You see somebody doing something wrong that's out of whack, and you immediately start to cue it to change it away. I understand why you do that, but if the cues aren't working, you need to start to evaluate from the bottom up to make sure that what you're doing is right. So we're going to show you 2 examples of how you can do things wrong and hurt yourself. We're going to bring Jimmy over to the muscle-up bar over here. Pull-up bar, muscle-up bar. For today's purposes, it's a muscle-up bar. So Jimmy's going to show us some bar muscle-ups with a chicken wing. So this might not seem like a big deal, but over time, a bunch of reps like this, and we're going to be running into some shoulder issues. Not always, not definitely, but probably. Another good example that we see in the gym often is when we have somebody on a rower, and it seems, this is the one that definitely seems to be more prevalent in gyms because everybody in the gym can row. And it's a very good scale. Someone has knee pain when they're running, they get ankle pain when they run, they get back pain when they run. Where do we put them? On the rower. Go ahead and row, Jimmy, and show us what it looks like when the heels come off and you're reaching for your catch. Good. So let's just make sure that we have the camera pointed into here. And show them what it looks like if you start to pick up some pace, Jimmy. All right, the heels come up. He's reaching into the catch. And you can stop there. So what this is doing is it's putting his low back under more load. It's putting his knees under more load because it's becoming more of a quad extension than a drive through the bottom of his foot. Poor skill can lead to all kinds of different issues. He can get knee pain on a rower. He can get low back pain on a rower. And it could be because of this skill. The important thing for us is, let's take it back over to the board. The important thing for us is not that you don't look for all of these things. We do want you to correct the ankles coming off of the rower. We do want you to correct the chicken wing muscle up. But what we're looking for you to do first and foremost is understand that the person should be doing those exercises, right? Their feet might be able to stay on the rower, but they need to shorten their range of motion because maybe it's a hip issue. Now they're reaching over their knees. Maybe it's a knee issue. And they're reaching with their butt and with their ankles. There's a lot of different, it could be an ankle issue. Speaking of that, right? They don't move enough, so they come off of the pad. There's a lot of reasons why this skill might look bad, and you can try all you want to change it, but if you don't evaluate the flexibility, the mobility, the strength balance, if you're not asking about recovery, you might miss the point, you might frustrate the client, you might be frustrated yourself, and you're not going to get what you want. That's how we want you to adhere to our athletes' hierarchy of needs.